Hello and welcome to part 1, Anatomy and Physiology of the Heart, Words with Shawna. I'm Shawna. When I was going through my information, I realized I was using a lot of medical terms despite trying to keep the information simplified. I want to make sure that almost anyone listening to my information can understand it, so I decided to make this video, and I recommend listening to this video before moving on to part 2, Anatomy and Physiology of the Heart. Now, some of the terms might seem too easy for some of you, but keep in mind that everyone has a different education level and different ways of understanding. That is why I wanted to make the video. I want to introduce these terms to help people gain familiarity with them because they might have a hard time understanding, or even visual learners. I'm a visual learner. Maybe seeing it will just help it click. They might know the words, but they just can't make it click on where it's at. So I will also be sharing references that I think are helpful and going further into the information. So without further ado, starting with the abdomen, which refers to the stomach, belly area. Anatomy refers to how something is just basically put together. Physiology is how something works. The aorta is the largest blood vessel in your body, and blood vessel just refers to the arteries and veins in your body that circulate the blood. It's helpful to remember arteries start with an A, and they carry blood away from the heart. The A in artery is for the A in away from the heart. More specifically, though, that blood is oxygenated blood that is being carried away from the heart through the arteries. But there's one exception, but I'm not going to get into that because my next video covers that. And veins will carry the blood to the heart, or more specifically, veins are carrying that deoxygenated and waste in the blood back to the heart. A term you might hear in some of the references I list in the next video is coronary sinus. So, coronary sinus is the collection of veins that are in or on the heart muscle. Heart muscle is also known as myocardium. These veins, the blue, will come together to make a large vein that is found between the left atrium and the left ventricle, and that is your coronary sinus. There are 4 chambers of the heart. You have atria, or the singular atrium. It refers to the top 2 chambers of the heart. You have ventricles, or the singular ventricle refers to the 2 bottom chambers of the heart. And then atrioventricular refers to being between the atria and the ventricles. So the atrioventricular valves are the valves located between the atria and the ventricles. And then you have the apex of the heart, which is at the bottom. You have the 2 ventricles coming together, and it's the bottom tip of the heart. So the bottom tip of where the ventricles come together. I do have some drawings, so please don't judge me. I have done the best I can. So, right atrium, left atrium, right ventricle, left ventricle. All right. And then, just to show you the apex, actually, I already have it drawn over here. Oh, the benefit of doing multiple videos. All right. So I have the heart outlined for its shape, and then we have the line separating the left from the right and the top from the bottom. So now our 2 ventricles are coming together for the bottom tip of the heart to make the apex. This is your apex right here. All right. Now, the heart has 4 valves. We have the aortic valve, a bicuspid valve, also called the mitral valve, a pulmonary valve, and a tricuspid valve. The valves have 3 leaflets except for the mitral valve, which is also called bicuspid valve. Leaflets are sometimes referred to as flaps or cusps. The leaflets of the valves act as doors, and they allow the blood to go forward, and then the door closes tightly and seals, and it keeps the blood from going backwards. The aortic valve is located between the left ventricle and the aorta, and that carries your oxygenated blood to the rest of the body for the organs and the tissues. So, left ventricle, aortic valve, it's going out to the rest of the body. And then we have the bicuspid valve, also known as the mitral valve, and it's located between the left atrium and the left ventricle. So bicuspid valve, and you can see here, I have 1, 2, 3 little flaps, leaflets, cusps on these, and then I just have this line. So we have 1 and 2 on the bicuspid valve. All right. And that's between the left atrium and left ventricle. It's a atrioventricular valve. All right. And then we have the pulmonary valve, and it's located between the right ventricle and the lungs, and that allows the deoxygenated blood to go into the lungs from the right ventricle to get rid of the waste and allow the lungs to add more oxygen and nutrients back to the blood. So that it can be sent to the body's organs and tissues. And that is here. We have the right ventricle and the pulmonary valve. And that's going to your lungs. Okay. And then lastly, we have the tricuspid valve, and it's between the right atrium and the right ventricle. So here's our right atrium, tricuspid valve, right ventricle. Now, this is my lungs, okay? The right lung has 3 lobes, so 1, 2, 3, and the right atrioventricular valve has 3 leaflets. The left lung has 2 lobes because the heart takes up the space where the middle lobe would be, okay? So we have 2 lobes on the left, and our left atrium and left ventricular atrioventricular valve is the bicuspid valve, 2. So 2 lobes, 2 leaflets. 3 lobes, 3 leaflets. Just to help with memory. Now, the atrioventricular valves, they try to keep the blood from flowing backwards back into the atria from the ventricles. And they are also connected to the heart's inner ventricular muscles, the inside, by the chordae tendineae, also known as tendinous cords, or the very easy way, heartstrings. Because they're called heartstrings because they're thin but really strong string-like connective tissue that helps the valves to function properly during the cardiac cycle. So now the cardiac cycle. We have periods of systole and diastole in the cardiac cycle. Systole refers to the heart muscles contracting or squeezing to push or eject blood out. When the heart contracts or squeezes, the pressure increases, and that helps to open those heart valves to allow the blood to go through. Like when you squeeze a ketchup bottle, you'll squeeze it and the ketchup moves out of the bottle through the valve. Okay, that's systole. Now, when you stop squeezing the bottle and go into diastole and relax, ideally, there's no ketchup coming out of that valve of the ketchup bottle. Same with your heart. So systole is also a time a person's blood pressure increases given the systolic or top number of the blood pressure reading. And diastole, as mentioned with the ketchup bottle, it's when the heart muscles relax or stop squeezing. There's no valves that go into the atria. If you see here, there's no valves. There's nothing to stop blood from coming into the atria. It just comes in, okay? I'm going to try to explain the systole and diastole with the atria. Okay, so systole is occurring and we're squeezing. Okay, so our atria are squeezing the blood to go through the atrioventricular valves, our bicuspid and tricuspid valves. Okay, it's squeezing it out, going through the valves into the ventricles. Okay, so the ventricles are full and they've expanded. Okay, now those heartstrings are attached to our inner wall. So when it expands, it moves those heartstrings, okay? And it's gotten to the point where it's stretched out. We're coming into diastole up here. Those valves are going to close, and there's not going to be any blood flow allowed back up into the atria, okay? So the diastole up here is occurring, and the atria are refilling. They're refilling with the blood from either the lungs or the body. So I'm hoping that's a simplified explanation just concerning the atria. The atria is blood. So I'm going to draw this out because we're going to give you a visual. We have a superior vena cava and an inferior vena cava. So superior vena cava means above, and inferior vena cava means below. All right. So our superior vena cava is coming down into the right atrium. Scribble that there. And the inferior vena cava is coming up into the right atrium. So we have superior vena cava coming down and the inferior vena cava coming up. And this is carrying our deoxygenated blood and waste to the right atrium. Now, the lungs, not that color, this color. The lungs are bringing oxygen-rich blood and nutrients to the left atrium. So let's draw that. Forgive my drawings. Okay. So the lungs are bringing oxygen-rich blood into the left atrium. Okay? And that's how the atria receives its blood to put into the ventricles and start the circulation process. So the circulation process, we have pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation. And I'm going to try to explain it in just a simplified manner. So pulmonary circulation is a short circulation of blood. So as we said, the right side of the heart is getting that deoxygenated blood and waste from the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. So we are going to scribble that in. So here's our right atrium, and it's going through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. And then from the right ventricle, we're going to go through the pulmonary valve into these lungs. So the lungs are filling up with this waste and deoxygenated blood, like so, from the right ventricle through the valve into the lungs. And it's going to be filtered there. So we're going to breathe in oxygen-rich air, and our blood in the lungs is going to filter in that oxygen and nutrients into our blood. And it's going to come, let me just color the next step. So now our lungs, from us breathing, have added oxygen and nutrients, and that's going to leave the lungs to go into the left atrium. So left atrium, here we are. And now the left atrium is going to go through the bicuspid valve into the left ventricle. So left atrium, bicuspid valve, left ventricle, and then it's going to go through the aortic valve into the aorta, which is our largest blood vessel. I did not mean to flip you off, sorry. To be carried out to the rest of the body. So this is going to be our aorta. It goes to the upper parts of the body and the lower parts. Whoop. So scribble that in. Thinking. Okay. So oxygen-rich blood from the lungs to the left atrium, through the bicuspid valve to the left ventricle, through the aortic valve, into the aorta, up to the upper parts of the body, down to the lower parts of the body. That is our circulation of the pulmonary. Now, we start the systemic circulation when the left ventricle throws that blood out into the body. Systemic is just meaning throughout the body. It's going throughout your system. So it's a much longer circulation of the blood versus the lungs. The lungs is a lot quicker. Now, during your systemic circulation, your body is taking in that oxygen and nutrients from the oxygen-rich blood that's coming from the arteries. It's going to your organs and your tissues. It's getting to all your cells, okay? Then, from the cells and tissues and organs, we are expelling or getting rid of the waste through the deoxygenated blood that's going into the veins and back to the right side of the heart by the superior and inferior vena cava. Okay? And that is what starts back our pulmonary circulation. All right? Now, the next is special heart tissue. That's part of the cardiac conduction system. So the cardiac conduction system is made up of masses of tissue, fibers, and they carry the electrical impulses, current signals to tell the heart to squeeze, to pump. So cardiac. Cardiac just refers to the heart. Electrical impulses are also known as action potential. Now for our electrical impulses and what reads them and what sends them. We have a sinoatrial node, also known for simplicity as the SA node, an atrioventricular node, also known as the AV node for simplicity. We have a bundle of His, the Purkinje fibers, and those work together to send signals to make your heart pump. So the sinoatrial node, or the SA node, is the small mass of tissue that's located in your right atrium, and it's the heart's natural pacemaker, and it produces your electrical impulses, current signals for the heart to beat. So this is our SA node right here in our right atrium. SA node, little dot there, little mass of tissue. It's going to send a signal to the AV node, atrioventricular node, between the atria and the ventricles. The atrioventricular node is right here, okay? It's going to send a signal to it through the internodal pathways. Now, internodal just means like between. So the electrical impulses are sent between the SA node and the AV node through the internodal pathways, okay? So the SA node fires its signal. We go through the internodal pathways to the AV node. Now, when its signal's fired and it's going through these pathways, your atria contract at the same time, okay? So here's the signal from the SA node to the internodal pathways, and atria contract at the same time. The signal sent to the AV node, okay? Now, the AV node will go to it's also a small mass of tissue and takes the electrical current received from the SA node and it sends it to the ventricles through the bundle of His, okay? So the bundle of His is special heart tissue that can carry the electrical impulses sent from the AV node to the Purkinje fibers. And then the Purkinje fibers are located in the ventricle walls, and when they receive the electrical current from the bundle of His, they'll trigger the heart ventricles to contract or squeeze at the same time. So this is our bundle of His, this J and backwards J, bundle of His. And these little squiggly lines, that's our Purkinje fibers that are sending that electrical current that the SA node sent into the both ventricles for them to contract at the same time. Okay? So SA node fires through the internodal pathway. Both atrium contract at the same time. The current makes it to the AV node. The AV node is sending it to the bundle of His. The bundle of His is sending it to the Purkinje fibers, and the Purkinje fibers tell the ventricles to contract at the same time. Okay? Now, the cardiac conduction system, it keeps the cardiac cycle active and promotes circulation. The cardiac cycle, to me, just refers to the mechanical process of the heart pumping the blood through the body. But at this point, I want to explain the primary, secondary, and tertiary pacemakers of the heart in an ideal situation. So primary means first. The primary pacemaker of the heart is the SA node. It's the first pacemaker to send your electrical impulses, currents, signals for the heart to beat. The secondary means second. If the primary pacemaker fails to send the electrical impulse, then the AV node will kick in, ideally, as the secondary pacemaker of the heart. Tertiary means third. So if both the SA node and the AV node fail to send that electrical impulse, then the bundle of His will kick in, ideally, as the tertiary pacemaker of the heart. So, ideally, we just keep our SA node, our primary number one pacemaker. But if it should fail, our AV node will try to be a pacemaker. And if it should fail, and this has failed too, the bundle of His will try to be a pacemaker for the heart. Okay? Now, your SA node sets the heart rate and provides about 60 to 80 electrical impulses per minute. The AV node can only provide about 40 to 60 electrical impulses per minute, and the bundle of His can provide at least 20 to 40 electrical impulses per minute, but that's really not going to help your circulatory system because, like we said, the systemic circulation is the longest, and those beats aren't really going to cut it. Now, our cardiac conduction system is what we see on electrocardiogram or ECG or EKG. This machine uses 12 stickers to be placed on the body for the 12 leads of the machine to clip onto. It does not hurt. Then, through the stickers and the leads, the machine can read the heart's electrical current for providers to look at and determine the heart's rhythm being produced. I'm not going to go into detail about how to read an EKG here or in part 2, Anatomy and Physiology of the Heart video. Just know that the provider can see the heart's rhythm, how well the SA node is firing or not firing, and they can interpret your missed or maybe compensating electrical signals. And lastly, A few more terms that are related to the heart muscles, connective tissues, and fibers. So myocardium refers to the muscle of the heart, as mentioned earlier in the video, and the chordae tendineae attached to the inner muscles of the ventricles that I talked about earlier. Well, the ventricles also have another type of muscle. Back up, hold on. So the chordae tendineae is attached to these muscles called papillary muscles, and they are these small nipple-like muscles, and they just keep that attachment to the wall. Now, the other muscle that the ventricles have is the trabeculae carneae, which is a crisscrossed ridge, and they stick out, and then they help with the suction of the blood from the atria into the ventricles to occur. So whenever the ventricles are trying to fill back up and they're trying to suck blood into them, this muscle helps to bring it into them. There is another muscle of the heart, and this muscle divides the right side from the left side. See, I drew it or colored it or whatever you want to call it. There. Okay. So we have a atrial septum right here and ventricle septum right here. And that's because we don't want the right side to mix with the left side. We have waste and deoxygenated blood coming in the right side of the heart to be cycled through the lungs and cleared, and the left side is getting that oxygen-rich, nutrient-rich blood that needs to go throughout the body, and we don't want these to mix at all. The next thing is pericardium. So breaking it down, pericardium just refers to around the heart, and it's also known as the pericardial sac. There are two main layers of the pericardium, which are the fibrous pericardium and the serous pericardium. Fibrous just refers to tissue that's made up of small fibers that are connected together. Serous refers to serum, but I'm going to call it fluid for simplicity. So fibrous pericardium would be a tightly connected fiber tissue around the heart, and serous pericardium would be a fluid around the heart from our breakdown. Now, the serous pericardium has two layers as well, its own two layers. We have a parietal layer and a visceral layer. Parietal refers to walls, and visceral refers to internal. Okay. Now, according to the Cleveland Clinic, the parietal layer is the outer layer that's firmly attached to the fibrous pericardium. So we have fibrous pericardium and the parietal layer, okay? There's no space in between them. It's attached. And then the visceral layer is the innermost layer of our pericardium. So this is outside, this is inside towards the heart. And you have this pericardial cavity in the space between the two layers of the serous pericardium. And that's what's holding your pericardial fluid. Then you have the visceral layer attached to the outer part of the heart that's also known as the epicardium. Again, there's no space there. It's attached to it. We have the visceral layer. We have this open area between the visceral layer and the parietal layer. And in between them is fluid. And then we have the fibrous pericardium with no space in between it and the parietal layer attached together. Okay. And I did draw that in one of my other videos, so I'm going to draw it again. All right. So we're saying this is our epicardium, this pink outline of the outer part of the heart. That's our epicardium, okay? And we are going to do the visceral layer that's attached to that epicardium. That's our inner layer, and that is one of the layers of our serous pericardium. See if I can make it visible. Okay. The visceral layer that is attached onto the epicardium. Okay. And then the second layer of our serous pericardium is the parietal layer of the serous pericardium. Okay. So this is our parietal layer of the serous pericardium. All right. It is attached to our fibrous pericardium without any space. Okay. Fibrous pericardium is this color, and it's attached to our serous pericardium, which is made up of the two layers. Okay. Fibrous is attached to the parietal layer of the serous pericardium. And then this white space is what is in between the parietal layer and the visceral layer of the serous pericardium. And this is where our pericardial cavity has fluid. There's the fluid in our pericardial cavity. All right. This fluid is what helps that heart beat against the lung without any irritation or friction. This fibrous pericardium is what keeps the heart from overextending itself. It keeps it in shape, and it protects it and keeps it in location, which that's something else that you can learn in the other video. But I hope reviewing these terms have helped you in your understanding of the words, or at least made you familiar with them. I hope you enjoyed the video, and be sure to watch part 2, Anatomy and Physiology of the Heart. Thank you. Bye.